All right, thanks Mustafa for being here, for talking to us a little bit about esophageal manometry. First, can you start out by telling us what is esophageal manometry?
Thank you, Julie. Yes, so esophageal manometry is a very interesting, simple device. It's basically a pressure catheter. It's a device that gets inserted to the distal third of the esophagus, and it is used to measure the pleural pressure in ARDS patients.
Okay, so other than ARDS patients, what other types of patients do we think we may use esophageal manometry on in CCW?
So mainly ARDS patients, and I would specifically say the more severe forms of ARDS with a P2F ratio of 150 or below. Also patients with morbid obesity, large chest walls, and poor chest wall compliance and poor chest wall mechanics.
Okay, and how are we going to use these values to dictate and guide our treatment in CCW?
That's a good question. So the whole idea of measuring the pleural pressure is that, especially in severe ARDS patients, these patients are usually very extremely sick and inflamed, and they have stiff chest walls. And if they're morbidly obese on top of that, that could add more complications to blind PEEP titrations using just a plateau pressure. The pleural pressure or the chest wall, the poorly compliant chest wall can increase your pleural pressure, and it usually acts as an opposing force, or a pressure that goes in the opposite direction of the distending pressure or the transpiratory pressure of the lung. The plateau pressure that we have displayed at end inspiration on the ventilator usually is a pressure that can basically be increased by the poor chest wall compliance. The whole idea of having that device in is to account for the pleural pressure and the poor chest wall compliance, and try to titrate PEEP up only to make sure that we have a good transpulmonary pressure, not to over distend and not to de-recruit at end inspiration and end expiration respectively.
Okay, and how often do you think we would be obtaining esophageal pressure measurements?
I would say mainly with any ventilator changes, especially in the initial setting with PEEP titration, and position changes. So a lot of studies looked and trials looked at the esophageal manometer, but they mainly looked at it in patients who are supined. I think there's a huge utility for this technology and this device in prone patients, because proning can, as you can imagine, when you have a chest wall sitting facing the bed, your chest wall compliance could be a completely different issue. And accounting for that chest wall compliance using this simple device will be very helpful. And I also wanted to add that it gets set up just like a CVP line, but the values that we get for the pleural pressure on the monitor, they're usually displayed in millimeters mercury, and the ventilator pressures that we have, they are in centimeter water. And we have a simple internet tool that we use to convert these values and get a very accurate transpulmonary pressure measurement for a better PEEP titration.
Thank you so much. All right, next we're going to show you exactly how this gets set up.
Thank you, Julie.